Would you pay 5,200 francs to bring a rooster to court? Called the police to report about the noise coming from the party they had just left. What the Welcome back to my channel. My name is Yvette. Today I'm gonna be sharing with you things that could only happen in Switzerland. I've shared many story times on my own, but I thought it would be interesting to find out what others have experienced as well. So without further ado, let's just get into it. It was a Saturday afternoon. New neighbors moved into the building and they left a note in the elevator. So, okay, side note, for those of you who don't live in Switzerland, writing notes and pasting it in the elevator is a thing in Switzerland. It's just a way of communicating with the residents of the building without having to go door knocking at every door just to say something. And it works because at a certain point of the day, the residents are bound to take the elevator, so everybody would see it. Or you can think of it like a PSA in some sort. Anyways, the note reads something along the lines of, "Hello new neighbors, we just moved here and we are gonna be having a housewarming party. We will try our best to keep it quiet. Thanks." Guess what? On the same page there was a reply written in pen, "We will call the police after 10 PM. And then there's a different POV posted under the same Reddit thread by someone who recounted a similar incident. A few years ago, neighbors were throwing a party. They invited friends and other neighbors in the same area. There's one such couple who came and stayed till about 10 PM, at which point they went home and immediately called the police to report about the noise coming from the party they had just left. You know what we call this behavior? We call it the Bunzli behavior. This is as Swiss as it can get. If you don't already know, the Swiss have strict quiet times from 10 PM to 7 AM. Neighbors would call the police on you if you do not adhere to the rules. In my 1.5 years of living in Switzerland, I have seen it all. So the Swiss are well known for being passive aggressive. They don't like direct confrontation, so there are certain things that they would do to get their point across that they are unhappy with you, and I would categorize them into 3 levels. First, the entry level is the Swiss glare. The stare of disapproval to subtly show you that whatever you are doing is not right and you aren't being respectful. But the thing is, they would never come up to you and tell you exactly what it is, so they would just stare at you and leave you to self-reflect. The intermediate level, writing notes on the lift. And these notes are usually not signed, so they could direct all of their anger at said person and have the entire building of residents see that note and take it as a warning. The advanced level. Your neighbors would call the police on you so that they don't have to deal with you themselves. And you would never know who is the one that called it. Is it a neighbor on the 3rd floor or is it a neighbor on the 7th floor? You will never know. Personally, for me, I haven't done anything to piss off my neighbors yet. I'm very lucky to have nice neighbors on my floor, but it's also partly contributed to the fact that I put in effort to have a good relationship with my neighbors. Switzerland has changed me to be more considerate of others, just follow the rules and don't get in trouble. I just witnessed my team spend half an hour arguing on whether showing up to a meeting at 13:00:59 seconds counted as being on time, or if only being there as the clock rose from 12:5959 to 13:00:00 counted. It was quite a polarized discussion between the Swiss Germans and the Swiss French, but I, for one, was just sad that there was no foreigners there to witness this very intense and earnest debate unfold. So someone commented, "If the meeting is scheduled at 1300, you are considered on time if you arrive from 13:00:00 to 13:00:59. But if it is scheduled for some reason at 13:00:00, you are on time exactly at 13:00:00 only." So an interesting perspective that somebody actually said is reference to Swiss trains. Like if the meeting is scheduled at 13 and if you are there at 13, you are late because by then the train would have already left. This is another typical Swiss trait, being on time. I personally think that there's a difference between the French and the German side. So in the German parts of Switzerland, I believe that punctuality is absolute, but in the French parts where I live, they are pretty chill about it. I've been invited to numerous dinner parties before, and I'm always the first ones to arrive because I didn't want to be late. And that's when I realized that the Swiss French are almost always late. In fact, it is actually considered rude if you arrive early, as said by a fellow Redditor. If you're invited to someone's place, never arrive early. On time is accepted, but the best is 10 to 15 minutes late. It is considered rude to arrive too early because your host might not have finished the preparations and cleaning their home, maybe. I never really understood this when I first arrived in Switzerland, but it was until I hosted my very own dinner parties with friends that I finally got it. I was so busy preparing for a dinner up to the very last minute, so when my guests arrived like 10 minutes late, it was like the perfect time. For this next story, I'm just going to give you a little bit of context. So, military service is mandatory for all Swiss men but voluntary for Swiss women, which is the same as in Singapore. So it's not that uncommon to see soldiers with their duffel bags and in uniform on a bookout day. I was at the train station of Zurich HB, and when I got on the train, there was a soldier that was sitting opposite us. As the train starts to move, he started to look around frantically for something. He leans over to us and asked, "Have you seen my gun? Did you see me come in with my gun?" So me and my wife was clearly shocked. Our face just said like, "What the fuck?" We said no. So the realization on his face when he realized, and he said, "Damn it, I have left my gun in the previous train." Then he proceeds to crack open a flesh explosion. Probably butchered it, but anyways, it's a beer, okay? He just opened it, drank it, and then he called his commanding officer. This story is as true as it can get because army officials reported that the Swiss soldiers misplaced 69 guns in a year as soldiers move around the country. So I just figured that this is like one of the 69. FYI, Switzerland has the highest gun ownership rates in the world because of its militia army, and Swiss soldiers are allowed to carry military firearms back home, but ammunition is usually left in the barracks. It is said to be a long-standing tradition of the Swiss army, which is different in Singapore because you are not allowed to bring your gun out of army camps. But if you think about it, Singapore is small. You can go from one end to another in an hour's time, so it makes sense for soldiers to collect their firearms and ammunition at the camps. But in Switzerland, Geneva to Zurich is already 3 hours. It will make much more sense for them to keep their firearms at home and for ammunition to deliver in times of crisis, if it happens, because Switzerland is a neutral state, so... But anyways, losing a weapon in public transport is wild, but what is even wilder is him being so calm and collected after realizing that he lost his gun. I could never do that, like my anxiety would never. Part of the lost and found of SBB trains are military rifles, so let's just hope that he did find his rifle in the end. The next story is also about Swiss neighbours etiquette, but on the other side of the coin. My husband and I used to live in an old flat where the floors were very creaky. Our neighbours were very chill about it, but once when we were at a party of the neighbour who is living downstairs, we asked him if he could ever hear us walking late at night because of the creaky floors, and he said he did. The next day, my husband jumped around the wooden planks for an hour just to determine which were creaky and which were not. After that, he stuck crosses made of white tapes on the non-creaky parts and said that when it's late at night, we should only walk stepping on the tapes. The crosses made the room look a little bit ugly, but I thought it was hilarious and cute. It is an example of the extreme consideration for neighbours that I have witnessed only in Switzerland. And somebody actually commented, "The only way this could get more Swiss is if you painted the planks red first." Then it will look like a Swiss flag, red and white. I am also living in an old apartment complex. I probably should have done what he did. You know what? I never had the habit of wearing house slippers when I'm at home in Singapore. We just kind of like step around barefooted. But ever since I moved to Switzerland, I cannot live without home slippers. So in winter, I will usually wear like the furry kind, and in summer, I'll wear like the sandals kind. I mean, apart from the obvious fact that it's for hygiene purposes, it also helps to soften the sound of your footsteps so you do not disturb your neighbours who are living below you. So This last story is crazy. You gotta sit with me on this one because it is a long one. Tell me, would you pay 5,200 francs to bring a rooster to court? Well, I wouldn't, but someone actually did. So there was this Zurich's Oberland family, let's call them the Myers, who set up a chicken coop at the attic of their detached garage with 10 hens and a rooster, to which the municipality granted them the necessary building permit. But 3 neighbouring homeowners were bothered by this and challenged the permit. A court case was drawn when the neighbours demanded that the building permit be revoked and the Myers be banned from keeping roosters. So now let's talk about the evidence submitted for this court case to be valid. So the neighbours actually submitted video recordings of the rooster, his name is Google by the way, crowing at an average of 10 times an hour, sometimes even up to 14.5 times per hour. How can it even be so specific? I don't understand. They even submitted a noise measurement at 84 decibels. And the way that they record this is pretty goofy. They just had like an app on their phone and they just stuck it out of their window to measure how loud Google is crowing at. For comparison, the sound level of public events in Switzerland must not exceed 100 decibels. To check and verify all of this, the court ordered an on-site inspection. Since the neighbours had commented that Google preferred to crow at the 9th hour of the day, they actually went down at 8 AM to check. But the demonstration actually backfired because from 8 AM to 9 AM, Google only crowed at 8:10 and 8:50. Anyways, long story short, the court ruled in favour of the rooster, Google, as it is not against regulations to keep roosters as pets. The Myers just need to soundproof their chicken coop as long as the rooster, Mr. Google, is kept in the soundproof stable from the strict quiet times of 10 PM to 7 AM. And an exception of 8 AM on weekdays, Google is allowed to roam free for the rest of the time. So the homeowners ended up paying 5,200 francs to bring a rooster to court, and the court actually ruled in favour of the rooster. So these are the 5 stories of what could only happen in Switzerland. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!